So this week we're supposed to discuss what kind of cultures we've experienced in the workplace, um, positive, negative, engaging, or entertaining, and we're also supposed to talk about if we believe that leaders are able to shape culture. Um, is there someone who would like to start with the first part of that about what type of culture you've experienced in the workplace?
Yeah, I can start. So, going back with working with Pepsi, um, the things that I noticed that Pepsi, their culture really that they stand true with is they're very positive in nature, and also one thing they're very competitive. So it's done in a positive way. But that's kind of their big themes in the culture within the company is driving competitiveness, but also like a positive natured teamwork. So those are kind of the things that I realize in my work.
Okay. Um, just from personal experience, I guess with Starbucks, there's actually a case study in this chapter about how Starbucks has a kind of an adaptive culture. It kind of meets what's going on. At one point, I just remember this is like part of our the culture at Starbucks as far as I can't remember what class it was, but we talked about how um, like the history of your company is so important to your company's identity. So one of the big stories that goes around is so Howard Schultz starts the company. He leaves and gives the reins to someone else, and then the company starts experiencing problems with quality control and things like that. So they call him back, and he shuts down Starbucks. I don't know if it was worldwide, nationwide. I can't remember exactly how it went. He shuts it down, the company for like a day, and we spend the entire day like retraining on what Starbucks culture is supposed to be. So for me, that's an example of adaptive culture, and Starbucks culture does continue to change. I mean, we try to keep the original focus of customers first and creating inspired moments, but um, it changes based on what the people want. So that's my experience.
Yeah, so for us at State Farm, I think it's very similar. Um, I mean, we're definitely customer driven as you guys are as well, but we use the terms as like they talked about in the textbook, you know, the terms we, um, it's a very inclusive culture. We call our employees associates. I think you guys talked about, you call them, I forget what you guys call them at Starbucks.
Partners.
Partners, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so very similar to those kind of things. Um, we also have, again, driven by the customer and ever evolving. And we have this, the latest and greatest thing that they're trying to push the culture with is called E3. So it's every customer, every interaction, every every time. And that's why we're trying to make this. And the other piece of that is a remarkable experience. So as the again the customer drives it, right. So as we find that we're lagging or failing in one area, then they push that area for the customer service piece. It's also very heavy in the work-life balance. That's at least that's what they preach. And really, it's pretty good. So it's a good, strong culture. I've been in worse cultures for sure as far as jobs go. You know, the military. Zach, you probably know some of this. I mean, it can be pretty challenging. It's pretty much
Very
there, the highway, that kind of thing. So this is definitely a really strong culture here.
I'll tag on to what Zach said about Starbucks. We always tag it as leading through the lens of humanity, but still focusing on business. And I experienced that today, actually, versus previous terms. So if you haven't been into a Starbucks in the last 24 hours, they're all red. And my set didn't go well. I had a pretty tough day today. And my boss's boss came into the store, and she could just immediately tell that there was something going on with me, that I was just frustrated and not my normal self. And you mentioned that we're partners, so she stopped what she was doing, and we stopped talking about all the misses, and rather just like what was bugging me. And so I feel like that's pretty representative of Starbucks culture currently. But prior to that, I've been in a similar situation, and it didn't matter how I felt or what was going on. You could obviously tell that I was upset, but didn't care, and wanted to talk about whatever they were there. So as much as we talk about Starbucks culture, it really can change depending on the leader that you have.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a really good segue into our next point, which is about whether we believe that leaders are able to shape culture. And who would like to start that out, segueing off of Nicole's point there?
So I can start. So one thing that I had, and this is kind of relative to that as well. So yes, I do 100% believe that leaders shape the culture. And one of the ways I think they do that is through the language that they use. So like the people that work for me, so I refer to them as my team, not as like my group, or so it's my team. It's always, and that was kind of something that the culture that I was brought up in early in my career, is it was always referred to as the team or my team. And then also it's never referred to as like a job. Like whenever you move positions, it's referred to as a role. So it's your role within the team. So I think it's things like that leaders can do, as far as language is something so small, but in reality, it's very impactful in the culture.
Okay. Chris, you were going to start. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So I would agree. So State Farm's been around for 90 plus years now, 92 years. But if I recall my history, State Farm history correctly, we're only on our fourth CEO, maybe fifth, but I think it's just our fourth. So interesting to see. And one of the things when you hire in, you go through a transit or a hiring process, and that their big piece of that is history, teaching the history of the company. So it's interesting to see how the company started and the culture, and it was really driven around the employee. And then as that progressed through the generations, I mean, it's always been about the customer as well. But I think we've just taken on a new CEO. It's the first one that's not one of the original group. So we've had a father and a son, and then the original guy. And so this guy's from outside of State Farm. So he has stepped in this year alone, and again, is really changing the way that we drive the focus on the customer. So it's definitely, I see a big push or a big change in the culture that's being kind of introduced to us. And not that that's bad. I think we needed some refreshing brand wise and such. So it's good. But absolutely, I think a strong leader can do wonders with the culture, or can drive the culture into the ground and really destroy a company.
I'd have to absolutely agree with that. One of the I can't remember which class this was from, but one of the things we learned was that CEOs, leaders of companies, really play a huge role in what the culture of a company is going to be. And in fact, that should be at least one of their drivers, one of their goals as a leader, is to change company culture, or fit company culture the way that they want it to be. And just talking about Howard Schultz again, his vision for the company has been so important for what the culture has been like at Starbucks for the last I don't know, 20 years, or how long it's been since the company opened. I can't remember.
40.
40. Okay, 40 years. Sure. Well, was that when the roasting company opened, or was that when he took over 40 years ago?
1971 was when Howard founded Starbucks.
So the Starbucks roastery, and then he had to come back, and then he started his. I was talking about like the Starbucks brand as we know it today.
1971.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I did a paper over it. I just can't remember any of it. So did it like my first class I ever took at ASU. So can't remember it.
So I guess then what I want to add is kind of just going back to my story. In the book, there's a chapter or like a section on building a trusting climate. And I feel like the leader that I have at this point is really focused on that. And so I thought it was really cool. I'll just tell you guys the steps or like the expectations of it. So the first one is collective competence. And we talk about that at Starbucks a lot when we say to just kind of trust others and assume positive intent. You just want to believe in the people that you're working with. And then the second one is openness and honesty. And then the third is concern for employees and other stakeholders. And that's totally what I experienced today, which is great. And then number 4 is reliability. And then number 5 is identification. And identification is pretty unique in that it's the degree to which members and other stakeholders identify with the organization's goals, values, and culture. And then leaders foster identification by connecting employees to organizational mission and values through orientation and training. And I feel like Starbucks really does a great job of that. We've just introduced a lot of new training programs, and especially for the supervisor role. So I feel like that culture is definitely influenced by the leader and definitely by Howard, like Zach said.
So where I guess, since Nicole talked about that of leaders changing culture within your own, since we all agree that leaders do change culture within your own environment. So for mine, I've had 3 different managers, and just from the attitude that those managers have towards their roles completely changed how the store felt. Just even for customers notice if the climate or the culture of the store isn't in line the way that it should be, or the temperature has changed with the employees. For instance, the store I'm in now is experiencing a little bit of upheaval because we just transitioned from a cafe store and opened a brand new drive-through store. And a lot of the employees were used to the speed of a cafe store, and now that I think we're the second most, our numbers are up 70% from what they were, and we're the second most busy store in the district now. We've had 5 or 6 partners leave because they just weren't able to. They didn't like it. They didn't like the change, and some of that might be due to, our manager is having a difficult time kind of helping them, easing that transition. She kind of just wants them to sort of deal with it, just sort of deal with it. I'm trying not to just tell them to just deal with it, and kind of try to foster a little bit of growth and companionship, at least with the people that I work with. I close mostly, so. But leaders definitely, at least in my experience, even at really low levels, impact culture in big ways. So, Ryan, what do you think?
Talked about reward power last week, using reward power to encourage partners who are struggling to adapt to a drive-through, for sure.
Yeah, reward power probably good. I agree.